First of all, thank you, Purdue University and Cranner for hosting this wonderful conference, and it's been a real pleasure. We're from UCLA Anderson School of Management, and we're very excited to share with you our solution to the mitigation plan of the coronavirus for Gidgets. To start off, I'd like to introduce my team. My name's David, and with me are Damon, Gabriella, Ian, and Sarah. As a quick recap of round one of how we optimize flow, we developed a model, a very simple algorithm to find the maximized profit strategy based on specific inputs and constraints we have. And these inputs included our manufacturing cost, our transportation cost, the exchange rate, the duties, the location, and of course the demand. And in round two, yesterday, we were given the situation of the coronavirus, and this is where we put it into our model and very efficiently, effectively identified the profit maximizing strategy. So our team actually spent more time to focus on in-depth financial analysis to understand month by month how things change and to really, really understand the trade-offs that we have and to spend time to know when and where we better invest our money at. And as a result, we came up with a three-part strategy. First, to buffer capacity. Second, to keep the plant open to up to 9 months. And third, to really spend time adapting a hybrid production sourcing strategy. And right now, I'd like to give the stage to Damon to talk about the first part of our strategy.
As David mentioned earlier, I'll be briefly touch upon our models and how do we arrive our recommendation in phase one of the case competition and show you how it's connected to part one of our recommendation in phase two to mitigate the coronavirus impact. So first, to recap, after putting all the information and constraints in our model, the model spits out the optimal global production flow, which is to shift 100,000 unit of production from China to Mexico. By doing that, we were able to achieve a maximum profit amount of $12.2 million US. One thing I want to point out here is that under such scenarios, we'll be running both US and Mexico plant at 100% utilization rate, which is not actually practical. So how do we allow for agility and flexibility to meet shifting demands? We refer to the heat map that we created on the right-hand side of the screen. This table actually shows the profit per unit based on different production site and different market. As you can see on the table, not only does US and Mexico have the highest profitability, but also Mexico exporting to US is the only profitable route when we're doing the inter-country trade. Based on such information, our team recommends Gidget to buffer up capacity in both US and Mexico. As for implementation, we recommend the company to add incremental capacity based on the contract-based partnerships. By doing that, we'll allow the company to add variable costs instead of upfront fixed cost. Once we buffer up the capacity at Mexico and the US, the company will be able to start building up the safety stock in inventory. With that, I'll pass on to Ian to talk about part two of our recommendation.
Great, thank you, Damon. So as part two of the recommendation, the team recognizes that due to the coronavirus, the demand in China could be negligible. And so some problems arise with that. Specifically, what shall we do with the Ningbo plant? Should we keep the plant running and incur fixed costs when no production is happening? Or should we shut down the plant immediately and exit the market? And so what our team did is we conducted our own tabletop exercises and did a what-if analysis, comparing a what-if analysis to evaluate keeping the plant open and the coronavirus being eradicated at different points in time. So we used a financial analysis, specifically the internal rate of return, to compare the different scenarios. And so we treated the downside fixed costs as an investment, and we compared that with the upside potential of earning production from keeping the demand going. And so as you can see on the far left, as Damon already mentioned, the best case scenario is that tomorrow coronavirus is no longer here. And with that, Gidget will be able to produce $12.2 million in profits. As a worst case scenario that we are willing to accept, we are okay to keep the Ningbo plant open for up to 9 months. With that, we computed a 65% internal rate of return over a 3-year horizon, producing an $8.1 million profit per year. So after this, we saw a dramatic drop in the return, and we feel that the cash can be best used elsewhere. As you can see that there is a lot of risk between these two bookend scenarios. And so I wanted to turn it over to Sarah, who will talk about part 3 of our recommendation to close that gap.
Thank you, Ian. Gidget's strategy is to maintain pricing stability while not operating at a loss. And in the prevailing situation, given the current pricing model and high cost of imports, this model is not sustainable for Gidget in the long run, considering the capacity constraints. We recommend that Gidget pursues a hybrid production process to satisfy the Chinese demand when it returns. Gidget should be willing to pay approximately $2.3 million for this service based on the likely alternative scenarios that we have. To execute this strategy, Gidget should expect a 24-month timeline to conduct an RFP, select a supplier, perform audits, outfit a facility, and get up to full production. Gidget should consider the risks associated with this, such as uncertain supplier capability and uncertain quality, and they will need to check for these in their audits. To conclude our recommendation, I'll turn it over to Gabriella.
Thank you, Sarah. As a recap, in order to address the coronavirus and mitigate the supply chain risk that is caused by the spread, our recommendations, again, are to, 1, buffer capacity in our Mexico and US locations by adding incremental capacity there in order to offload our production and reduce utilization. Secondly, we will recommend maintaining the plant open for 9 months until we are able to better analyze the coronavirus spread, and at that point, we will make a determination of whether we would like to keep the plant open. And lastly, as Sarah just mentioned, we will adopt a hybrid manufacturing and sourcing strategy in order to build strategic partnerships, but we understand this takes 2 years, so we will immediately begin sourcing RFPs to be able to establish those relationships as quickly as possible. In addition to our short-term tactical recommendations, we're also proposing long-term strategic recommendations. And the first is to evaluate and explore other production sites in the ASEAN countries. So these include Vietnam, Thailand, Malaysia. And this will not only give us an alternative to China by being able to fill Asian demand locally there, but we will also be able to leverage initiatives that are currently happening in those countries around increasing manufacturing, as well as Industry 4.0 initiatives that will position Gidget in a way that we'll be able to scale and increase productivity in the future at a much quicker pace. Secondly, we will also develop an inventory strategy to support increasing safety stock to hedge against unforeseen high-risk scenarios in the future, which will allow us to more effectively react to a coronavirus situation. And lastly, to Jill's point, we agree that we need to prioritize good corporate citizenship and expand on the pricing and the profit approach by also looking at the triple bottom line approach of people, planet, and then profit. And this message should come from a top-down perspective where we focus on ethical sourcing, as well as fair labor practices and environmental sustainability manufacturing. With our short-term and long-term recommendations, we believe that Gidget will not only be able to answer the team's questions and concerns, but also be able to effectively manage the coronavirus situation, as well as position itself in a sustainable way for future success. Thank you again for your time, and now we'll open it up for questions.
Can you go back to your cost of capital slide? I'm not following the percentages on the bottom, and I can't quite tell what your rate of return is.
Yeah, absolutely. So the internal rate of return is what you find at the bottom. So the numbers going across, those are at each month. So at each month, the coronavirus could be eradicated or not. And so we took each of these scenarios as in a different case. So obviously, if the coronavirus leaves tomorrow, there wouldn't be any risk. And the longer we wait, the more that we have to spend on fixed costs. And so that's where the negative free cash flows come from. However, from the earlier months, we were able to capture some of that demand in earlier months so that we have a higher rate of return. So the 1,150% is that for the first 4 months, we have spent fixed costs there, distributed evenly. So the case provided $3 million, so over 4 months, a third of that. And the reason that's so high is that we're using a 3-year horizon of being able to fulfill that demand. So comparing those negative free cash flows with those positive free cash flows, and we're able to get that 1,150%. Yep. I guess if there's no other questions, thank you again very much for the opportunity. And feel free to let us know if you have any other questions. Really appreciate it.